Welcome to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. Each week, Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy explore the moments, questions, and ideas that shape who we are and who we aspire to be. And now for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to In Such a Time podcast. And today we are going to be acting as a crisis triage team as we are going to ask the question, what happened to Shavuot? And I brought this topic to you, Rabbi, because it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. And as we're recording this, Shavuot is on the horizon. It's something that we are preparing for. And Shavuot, one of the Shalosh Regalim, the three most important festivals, the pilgrimage festival, is something that within the non-Orthodox diaspora world is not well observed or celebrated. And today I thought we'd talk a little bit about that and love to hear also from your perspective, spending so much time in Israel, and also having children in a Jewish day school, what it's like for you, Shavuot. So maybe you could start us off by, before I go into the problem, maybe you could talk a little about what it's like in your experience and what Shavuot mean to you.
Can I just introduce the holiday?
Please.
I didn't know that Shavuot needed triage.
It does.
So, I guess I'm here as part of the triage team, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I have any of the tools for this.
It's a crisis.
Apparently. So we're now in a 49-day period between the second day of Passover, which marks the celebration of freedom, between that and Shavuot, which marks the revelation, the receiving of the Torah at Sinai, and that's a 49-day period. It's a 7-week period. And during that period of time, we prepare ourselves in a spiritual kind of way, and there's different days on that calendar that mark various occasions, but we kind of prepare ourselves to go from that journey, which the rabbis created this false narrative that it took 7 weeks to go from Exodus to Sinai, but it doesn't matter.
And also lined up with, at the same time, the agrarian calendar in Israel and the wheat and barley harvest, and counting the growth of the Omer, and that's where you're counting of the Omer.
Exactly. And so it's one of the three harvest holidays, where pilgrimage holidays, where Aliyat Regel, like people would go up to Jerusalem because you physically actually have to go up the mountain to Jerusalem. And it's become a day known for Torah study. And some of the traditions of Shavuot are, this is not true amongst all Jews, but you eat dairy at night in order to allow yourself to stay awake. There's also this notion that perhaps you eat dairy because once the revelation at Sinai happened, the Israelites realized that they weren't observing the laws of kashrut,
and all of their pots and pans were not kosher. Yes,
that's a nice take on it. But one is supposed to really study all night long, and there's a tradition to eat dairy, and then some other Jews say, no, you should only eat meat. So of course there's a machloket, there's a disagreement, thank you, between Jews. What else is new?
Yeah.
And when I was living in Israel, Shavuot actually was my favorite holiday because Shavuot really it went through a renaissance. So Shavuot, you have something called Tikkun Leil Shavuot, which means you study all night long. And Israel,
until the sunrise.
Until the sunrise.
Yeah.
And so Israel is so interesting in that way that it so thoughtfully weaves the secular and the religious together sometimes. And so there would be study sessions of all sorts, cultural and scientific and religious and non-religious affiliated at all night long. And when I lived in Tel Aviv, that was or outside of Tel Aviv, that was a really exciting night to be involved in it. You would go hopping between the different Tikkun Leil Shavuot, and also in Jerusalem, there's a big scene for that. And when I worked at a synagogue in Tel Aviv called Beit Daniel, which is the big landmark Reform synagogue in Tel Aviv, they really created this whole movement. They were kind of the creators of the Renaissance, or one of the creators of the Renaissance, of bringing it back to the secular demographic. And so thousands of people would come to Beit Daniel to learn from professors and politicians and actors and there was programming literally all night long. And then at 2 a.m., there would be a big concert and be a very big name in Israel. And I just remember being so excited by all of this, that people are excited to learn and wait for this night all year long. And really, wherever you go, there's different competing Tikkun Leil Shavuot. And I just felt so proud of like that renaissance of Shavuot. Also, it's an agricultural holiday. So if you go to the farms, there's all these Bikurim ceremonies. Bikurim is like you bring your first fruits. And so on Shavuot, if you're on a kibbutz, like the first fruits, the new babies would be presented. And the bales of wheat would be presented, and just like a celebration and love for the land. And so most Jewish holidays have an agricultural element and also have a spiritual, mystical element or historical element, and those are interwoven. And so Shavuot just in Israel is just such a celebration of all of those things, and also the dairy industry.
Which is so strong in Israel. And also, I remember being in Jerusalem and people walking to the kotel, to the wall, and holding in all white and bringing sheaves with them as their bikurim, and going to then the kotel plaza, and this festivity and excitement, and like you said, study groups and the chavrutot all over the place. It's an amazing, electrifying day.
There's also like the Shavuot fashion. Everyone has to have the wheat in their hair and the flowers and the white, and it was exciting. Yeah. What was your experience with that?
Well, I want to just reflect on what you're saying there, because I can talk to you about I think you summarized so well the Israeli experience. And I think that if I were going to offer this triage diagnosis here, it's the fact that much of what you're explaining right now is probably new to a lot of our listeners. And that Shavuot within the diaspora, especially diaspora reform world, is something that is not particularly well observed or understood at all. And even to the point that I think many Reform Jews don't know what Shavuot is or when in the year it falls. And I guess if I could lay out the problem, I would say, just step back for a second and imagine. I said to you that there was a holiday, and the holiday had a really great story. The story was about the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And the holiday also had a great connection to the life in Israel, the agricultural cycle, most beautiful time of the year, a time of harvesting and celebration. And then I said that there's a culinary component to it, and it's a time of eating dairy and blintzes and cheesecake and all sorts of fresh cheeses. And you would say, wow, that must be a really popular, very well observed Jewish holiday. This must be something that everybody does. And note that in at least in my experience in North American Reform Judaism, it is almost completely forgotten. And what happened to Shavuot that here's where we are. And I would submit a couple of reasons why I think that's the case. I think number one is, and this isn't my primary reason, but I just want to say it first, is I think the timing of the year, and that by the time we get to late May, early June, it's the end of the religious school year, and so much of what we do at the synagogue is driven by religious school. It is a time usually of waning synagogue attendance and engagement, as people are already thinking and heading off for the summer. Just not a focal time in the calendar. And perhaps because it's so beautiful outside and there's so much to do, unlike, let's say, Hanukkah or Purim, where the synagogue is a warm, welcoming place in a cold time, that it's not on the calendar. But I think the real issue with Shavuot, if I can, is that it doesn't have a good hook. Let me explain. What do you do on Shavuot?
Ice cream.
Hold on. Like, what is the ritual? There's a Passover Seder. There's a Tu B'Shvat Seder. There's a Rosh Hashanah dinner and simanim, all of the symbols of the time, and there's shofar, and there's tashlich, right? There's Yom Kippur fasting. There's a Purim carnival and dressing up, or a spiel and drinking with that. There is a Hanukkah menorah to light the Chanukiah. For me, it's ironic, even oxymoronic, that Shavuot, which is the celebrating of Matan Torah, of the giving of the Torah, and all of these commandments, all of these things to do, itself is lacking a thing to do.
That's so surprising to me because out of all the holidays in my head that's the most ritualized, I'll tell you why.
Please.
Because it would require, and I'm now gonna I'm gonna call myself out as like an Ola, like an immigrant mom in Israel.
Uh-huh.
I would have to, I had usually one other mom who would make sure that whatever was said in the WhatsApp that she like knew I needed. I didn't need the translation, but I wasn't following unless someone told me that I needed to like really pay attention. So she would say, Leora, I don't know if you noticed, but the ganene, the kindergarten teacher, said that you need to get a basket and you need to get wheat. You need to make sure you have white clothes. You need to send your kid to school on this date, dressed like this. And there was so much ritual around the love of the land.
Yes.
And around preparing your child for like immersing themselves in this pilgrimage kind of experience. And so for me, for so many years, especially as a very young mom, it was so ritualized around like creating this ethos that actually didn't exist so naturally in me because we did celebrate Shavuot growing up in a conservative Jewish home and also in conservative synagogue. And we did have Bikurim and we did a lot of things related to that. But I think that it's so much about the actual land that when you're removed from it, and you're also celebrating like the end of the harvest in general before the sun comes and burns everything. And so there's just like you're holding on to something that's about to go away, like the last beauty before the most terrible season of the year, which is 100-degree weather for
Some of
months.
us, don't mind it so much.
Yeah, and
yeah.
And here I think that you're right. There's just there, what I love what our members say to us, like, I remember it was like this, it was like this, it was like everyone has a memory, like Gilsa and Kuta, like their childhood memory of something. I don't think people have the childhood memory of Shavuot. And perhaps that's what you're saying.
Right. I'm saying that what is the fun thing to do for Shavuot? You're not building a sukkah. You're not having a seder. You're not lighting a Hanukkah and getting presents. You're not making latkes. Right. These are the things that people hold on to. And I think that in a diasporic context in which there's not that same idea of the land, I don't think that anyone at our synagogue, outside of those who have kids in Jewish day school, are having their kids dressed all in white and putting sheaves, and bits of wheat and barley. I see you have a sad face in it because it's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
And you having children in Jewish day school, this is something that you're able to some degree hold on. And I'm assuming there's a big tefillah, an assembly, a tekeh, something. Yeah, always at Lafal, and every Jewish day school will have something like that. And I think that this is a real miss, a real loss on what should be. That's what I'm saying. I think we're a crisis team here. That what happened to Shavuot and how can we think about making Shavuot? How can we bring some of this celebration and love and festivity to our congregants over a holiday that they don't even realize that they're missing? And maybe those listening to this now will be thinking about this, saying, "I had no idea. Why don't we do something like that?"
I mean, I know a lot of communities in the diaspora. First of all, it's hard to celebrate Shavuot in connection to Israel because you've just had Yom Ha'atzmaut. So marketing wise, it's difficult.
I would go even further than that. I would say that part of the issue plaguing Shavuot is that Simchat Torah is standing on its base. That is that if I were going to think of a way to celebrate Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, I would maybe have hakafot and dancing with the Torah. Maybe I'd read the Torah from the beginning all over again. But we did that at Simchat Torah. We can't re-engineer the calendar to have it start and end. But we already, I think for many non-Orthodox Jews, we already have a Torah-centric holiday. It's called Simchat Torah.
You know what? Maybe I'm thinking on my toes right now. I'm in a creative mood. I think that Shavuot is a day of longing. And I think that that is actually what the feeling of the holiday is. Like you're longing I'm just thinking of all the stories that are related to Shavuot. We read the book of Ruth, which is like so much about longing for love and longing for connection and longing for God, longing for a temple.
To be seen.
Yeah. We're longing for a harvest. We're longing for that returning to that moment of revelation at Sinai. And so maybe the holiday is not about revelation, that's not something that I've actually ever been able to really understand. What am I revealing? What has been revealed to me? But more about like, what am I going towards? I think it's about keeping us in motion.
So let me posit, I think, two attempts by the non-Orthodox world to put Shavuot on the map, and we can evaluate them and think about if there are ways that we would tweak and maybe add to this.
Yeah.
And I think that the first thing is that Reform Judaism has done a very typical Reform Jewish thing to say, if we can't make people come to it, let's make this about the kids, because then the parents will come. And so diasporic Reform Judaism took this holiday and then borrowed the Christian ritual of confirmation and said, oh, confirmands, they're learning. So let's have, and it's at sort of the end of the school year, let's make our graduation confirmation ceremony connected to Shavuot. Let's time it to either on Shavuot or the Shabbat closest to Shavuot. And even in some confirmation ceremonies, you will see the confirmands bringing sheaves and putting them in the ark as part of the process. There's a reading of the Ten Commandments. And so basically, everything is folded further into the religious school because the religious school, we know that that's an area where the passion lies. And so I think that's one attempt to put Shavuot on the map. And to the point that people will know confirmation even better than they will know the word Shavuot, which again is ironic because confirmation is not a Jewish ritual, right? The second one you mentioned is Tikkun Leil Shavuot, and I think that this is a more modern way of connecting. It's not modern in that there's always been this Tikkun Leil Shavuot, but I think that the Reform movement and conservative along with it has sort of rediscovered over the past couple of decades. I think this comes out of the Havurah movement and out of sort of do-it-yourself Judaism, that there's this idea of the Tikkun Leil Shavuot and having study sessions and doing them in very creative ways, like you're mentioning. So I'll say it. And when I was a rabbi in San Francisco, I put together this program realizing that there were two Reform synagogues, a conservative synagogue and the JCC within just around a mile apart of a straight line if you go on California Street.
Yeah.
And we did different study and learning sessions at each one of those four. And in between each one, we would walk and carry Torahs with us. So you study, walk, everyone's walking the screen together, carrying the Torah, go to the next one. There'd be at each stop, there'd be like 15 minutes first of like dairy food and like fruit and stuff to eat, and then you'd study there, and then you go to the next one, and then to the next one. And the last stop was at the conservative synagogue, and even we added there that there were smaller group options all the way to the all night. And then people would even, I think we scheduled a morning walk out to Ocean Beach to watch the sunrise, and did like that was mamach, like a real Tikkun Leil Shavuot experience. Yes,
I love that.
And when I first came here, we did some partnering with our local conservative synagogue, Bet Torah, and we didn't do an all night, but we did an evening study and dairy. So that works as well. The Tikkun Leil Shavuot, I think it's a little bit hard in the suburbs in which you have a lot of families with kids, and staying up until 6 in the morning is not so easy. And I mentioned that I do like the warm weather of Israel, but I am not good at staying up past 11 p.m. And so we've done study sessions here, but they're usually until they end 9 or 10 p.m. But even when we do that here, it's a small turnout.
Yeah.
Because people don't feel the need to do something for Shavuot. They don't know it's Shavuot, and there's no sense of guilt of, oh, I'm going to miss that holiday. People don't even know that it's an opportunity for them.
I mean, the times that we have done it in my years here were really beautiful, and I'm so always intimate, but beautiful, and I think appreciated, and I think very grounding. Because I think Shavuot's a very grounding holiday. And
you and the cantor are going to be leading a Shavuot experience here, and we're going to be doing something for Erev Shavuot with some of our congregants as well. We won't disclose that just yet, but podcasters will hear about that later. So yes, it's not that we are ignoring it altogether. It's that I guess there's a part of me that wishes that people anticipated Shavuot the way they anticipate Yom Kippur. Right?
I agree with you. I think that that's also part of the question of when you start taking away certain obligations, this goes back to, our ongoing discussion. When you start taking away certain obligations and the way that you buy into a ritual community, then yeah, you're definitely going to lose part of that kind of participation, and people aren't going to know that that's something that they should even tune in for. Um, I've, when I first moved here from Israel, I don't think I anticipated how much I would feel that shift in the diasporic experience of being a Jew. And I think I took for granted in many ways the way that the Jewish calendar just kind of sets you in motion. Um, it's missing in my life at the moment. I'll say that bluntly, and I do find ways of making it happen, whether it's through being a rabbi here and engaging in the ways that we engage here, or finding personal ways of doing that with my kids' school community or with my neighborhood. And I love intentionally being a part of spaces that are about studying. I mean, I am going to a late night study session in my neighborhood this year, which is really beautiful, and it's multi-denominational, and I'm very excited about that. But a part of me misses seeing the kids with the flowers in their hair, just preparing themselves, and like I think in Israel it's interesting because it's so taken for granted. It loses, like when Jews in the diaspora do something, it's with intention and it's for holding on to something. Israeli Jews just do it automatically and sometimes forget the meaning of it. And so there's two sides. There's two sides of the coin.
I think in addition to that, when the national school system has holidays on those days, it is a big reminder to the world that something special is happening.
Yeah.
And now you have time to fill. And so now you look for things to do. Here, this year, we're having the exact opposite. Not only do we not get time off for it, but this year Shavuot happens during Memorial Day weekend. And it's very hard to keep congregants' attention during Memorial Day weekend. So here, I have a thought or two about, as the triage team, about what we could do about this. First of all, I think that we should be going way further into this dairy thing. I think that this should be Jews and dairy, right? So the lactose intolerant Jews. I'm sorry, but we could have lactose-free options. But this should be a national event of wine and cheese tastings. Yes, exactly. Like wine, cheese, and we've done events like this.
Well,
We
like
should
a
have
big
one.
one.
It's almost like a Tu B'Shvat Seder or like a Rosh Hashanah dinner with all of the simanim. There should be different tastings of cheeses and it's having a discussion, having some sort of study in which you are nibbling on good cheeses and dairy products. That sounds to me like a great time.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that we should institute the Chappaqua Wine Festival on Shavuot.
Yes, the Westchester Food Festival, even like that. Yeah.
Cheese and wine
Yeah.
Shavuot Food Festival. Very, very niche, but expand it to whoever wants to come.
I wonder even if there's a kind of a cheese that I'm thinking of. There's this tradition that I enjoy that's less known, that you take the etrog at Sukkot and you infuse vodka and it's ready for Purim, and then you drink it on Purim. I have a fantastic stash of it in my fridge, as you know, of this. That why can't we? There's some cheese that must be around 7 weeks to make, that you could make it right after Passover.
Oh,
you make the cheese so that it is ready on Shavuot to eat. You know what I'm saying? Like there could be some sort of I don't know what the fermenting, whatever happens. I'm obviously not a cheesemonger in my life, but there could be something around the wine and cheese that could attract. So
wine and cheese. And I also think that being in the suburbs, people are craving culture and people are craving intellectual content. I think that.
I do too.
I'm not sure if I'm correct. And I think that could be something that we pull together and really highlight, like we have so many brilliant people in our community, and allow people, it's something that I always liked in Israel is on Shavuot, it's an opportunity not just for rabbis to teach because we're not that interesting, but allow people in the community to bring their expertise and to teach something that they're passionate about, whether related to Judaism, not related to Judaism, but just come and say, we're having an evening, we're presenting, telling stories,
congregational TED Talks. What's your TED Talk?
Moth hour.
Okay, very good.
Okay, we
Yeah.
figured it out.
So I'm gonna put a second one out there,
Okay,
and,
let's
and
do
again,
it.
we can all people can let us know what they think of our ideas. I think that especially in the diaspora communities, we have an opportunity to lean into the interfaith aspect of Shavuot. That is that the Book of Ruth is starts with about an interfaith relationship.
Yeah.
The Book of Deuteronomy forbids marriage to a Moabite. Specifically, the Moabites are the sort of arch enemies, the ones we absolutely cannot cohabitate with. And if anyone does, then they'll be banished from the tribe, if not killed altogether. And here comes a Moabite woman who is in the book of Ruth. Ruth is the most moral, most, kind. She is the moral exemplar. She's the hero of the story, but also the one who represents the values as we espouse them.
She is
And
a convert.
she's a Moabite convert who chooses to go with her, basically saves her mother-in-law, who without a male heir will be destitute, and provides that male heir to her in I know it's in a time where women didn't have many options. This is the one card she has to play, really, and eventually becomes the great 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 grandmother of King David, who is the harbinger, the ideal of the Messiah, and to teach that not only is Deuteronomy wrong in saying that we should, completely turn away from Moabites and those outside of our tradition, but that Moabites are a part of the Davidic lineage and are at the center of the future of Jewish salvation. And I think it's a wonderful story to read with non-Jews and to talk about ways in which we add to one another's understandings and the way and one another's practices.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's one of the most beautiful stories. Like the literary nature of it, the narrative of it, it's so beautiful. And I also think that the spiritual religious element, which is that anyone has access to the Jewish people. If they want to have, like, we were all standing at Sinai. That's the idea, that it was those who want to be Jewish can opt into it as well. And Ruth is the ultimate story of somebody who wanted to be a part of this community and took on all that it meant to be a part of it. Not only that, but her descendants were going to announce the Messiah.
And not only that, but when working within the Christian context, the seed of the Messiah through David and through Bethlehem is, for Christians, the seed ultimately of Jesus. And so it's a shared story of lineage for them as well that I think Christian audiences can connect with.
I think you're triaging the heck out of this Shavuot.
I have a third option.
I
Are you
knew
ready?
you did. Go.
Okay, this one I think it's done to some degree, but and you touched on this, but I don't know if our congregants would think about this as much. I think I've heard of a model in which there is a celebration of every baby born over the past year, in which they are invited into but you bring this to the diaspora community where you send something out to every new parent of every new baby that has been born since last Shavuot, and you bring them onto the bima, and you invite all of the parents and grandparents and community, and you do a blessing and a thanks to God for the gift of new life, and you have an ice cream party afterwards.
I think that that's beautiful. I mean, in all seriousness, on the kibbutzim, that was the tradition. You presented the new cattle, the new goats, the new fruits, and then at the end you present the new babies, which is so much about the continuity of the Jewish people. I love that idea. I think in some ways you're saying, like, what's the hook of getting people in? It's not a hook. It's presenting the holiday as what it is and saying, let's, people are always looking for ways to deepen their Judaism and their roots, and so much of it is already built into the experience, and it's just, I think, opening the container and saying, like, look what we have, and let's dive into it.
So my worry with this is that I think people can connect to each of these rituals, but I don't know if any of these rituals would make them understand or we'd have to be very mindful to make sure to say that, oh, by the way, what you're doing, this is Shavuot. Like if we said to everyone, hey, we'd love to do a blessing of all the new babies in the synagogue, people say, that's great. Wonder what a wonderful idea. Hey, everyone, we'd like to do a night of wine and cheese tasting and study. Hey, that's great. Hey, everyone, we'd like to read the Book of Ruth and do something in interfaith work, especially with our Christian neighbors. Um, that we have to hit our congressman over the head and let them know, like, P.S., this is a Jewish holiday, and these are things that one does on this Jewish holiday, and it's the greatest Jewish holiday that you've never heard of. So we just have to be very, it has to not just have the action, it has to have the correct messaging and communication to say that there's a treasure out there and you just don't know about it yet. And all these fun things that we're doing, this is actually it.
I think that that's our job in general is that we just how do we just present the things that are already here and make people care about them and say, like you want you're so thoughtful about who you are and your Jewish identity and you want to make that more experiential. Oh my God, we're providing these experiences for you. We're
Right.
not providing, we're doing it together.
Right. And I think this goes back to somewhat to our last podcast. We were talking about, do we want to be more accommodating or do we want to stick to our standards? You could say, well, are we trying to answer the congregants' needs, or are we trying to have the congregants realize that they have needs they don't even know about? Right. Our congregation is not clamoring at our door saying, what are you doing for Shavuot this year? When are you going to
But
release your
they
Shavuot
might.
plans? But I'm saying that a lot about being a rabbi is to tell people about things, about opportunities they don't even know
I
about yet.
agree.
It's not just about to say, like, oh, you're asking for X, so I'm going to give you the best X I can. It's to say that you're asking for X, but you might actually really be really interested in Y, and I'm going to make you love Y as well.
Last year, I believe, I sat with the representatives of the sisterhood and we went through the Jewish calendar and picked events related to each one. And we made these gorgeous cheese platters. And it was so special because, I mean, it was gorgeous. But then we studied Torah for like 15 minutes beforehand and gave that. We put a text to the ritual, and I think that people walked away with it saying, okay, like, yeah, now I have a gorgeous cheese platter that I'm gonna eat, but now I know that this is something that I'm gonna maybe bring Shavuot into my home. I'm gonna maybe light candles with it. I'm gonna do something that I wouldn't have done. So I think that that's the imperative that we have, is that you and I have our own personal ritual experiences, but how do we not guilt people into celebrating? That's maybe that's a way to do it, but that's not the way that I want to do it. That's how we're going to triage the
Yeah.
situation. How do we say, like, look at look at all the cards that you can choose from and how you're
Right.
going to really enlighten your Jewish home.
Right. And at the exact time of year where you are focused on packing trunks for your kids to go to a summer camp, how do we get your attention just for a second to say there's something really interesting going on in Jewish time right now?
We were at it was some kind of conference or meeting with rabbis where a rabbi who I really admire, she spoke about that in her synagogue, it's very important for her not to just make graham cracker sukkahs, but to teach children Mishnah and Talmud and rabbinic literature and how to engage with texts and what is a kosher sukkah, because ultimately the experiences are really important, but it's the knowledge that you pass on and it's taking yourself seriously enough with a big grain of salt.
Yeah.
But saying I'm not going to be apologetic about what it means to be Jewish, and I'm not going to start shaving off pieces of my Jewish identity just because it's inconvenient. I'm going to weave it into the rest of my life.
It's interesting. I often think of the opposite issue, which is not to bring Mishnah and Talmud to children, but the fact that we often seem to model for our adults that Torah is a children's book, and that you read these stories of the Torah when you're in second and third and fourth grade, when they're actually very like mature pieces of literature. But I'm going to say one last difficulty I'm having in this triage report. We keep talking about the book of Ruth, which is because it's the time of year when we read it. It's one of the five Megillot. But the main Torah reading is the revelation at Sinai and God's divine attributes and then the Ten Commandments. And I feel like a lot of non-Orthodox Jews have a real hard time with this section of Torah. On one hand, it's a very anthropomorphic presentation of God. God has a back. God talks to Moses. Moses can't see God because God's back passes before, while Moses is behind the rock. It feels very mythological. I think it's very challenging for many of us to connect to that theology, that moment of Torah. And then second of all, I think that a lot of American Jews have a very complicated relationship with the Ten Commandments. I think they often associate Ten Commandments with public Christian presentations of the Ten Commandments. We spend so much of our time trying to push away the Ten Commandments and saying that this is something that is a violation of, our shared spaces. And I think that we have given the Ten Commandments a bit of a bad name because of this association. And so the central Torah reading of the holiday of receiving the Torah presents a section of Torah which I think many Jews have real difficulty connecting with. Your thoughts?
No, I'm thinking about it for a moment. I understand it. I'm trying to have empathy, sympathy, understanding for people who think that way, and I think maybe are turned off to the idea of God and to the idea of Judaism because of this presentation of the story. I look at this as metaphor, and I look at most of Torah and Jewish tradition as metaphor, except for what's not.
Yeah,
we can talk about that another day. And so when your starting point is this is mythology, but this is mythology that is so important because this has been a thread that has woven the people together. This has been a starting point, and it's also connecting to those who do believe that there was real revelation at Sinai. But when that's your starting point, that it doesn't matter if it happened or not. For some people, it matters very much if it happened or not. Then it's about what do I take from that in order to fill up my spiritual cup. And I think that that's an internal exercise that I've been on for many, many years. I used to get to Shavuot and be like, I do not understand the word of the meaning revelation, understand what it means to be a chosen people, to receive something. I probably still don't understand. But I'm in the spiritual pursuit of trying to understand what it means to be wowed and to be dumbfounded by something. And I think that that's what happened. If we're talking about like, what's the thing that happened at Sinai? It's being prepared to be awed. And so when people tell me that like this text is kind of scary to me or it doesn't make any sense to me, I think that sometimes we need to undress the text a little bit and say what's underneath it, what's perhaps a message that we could find that is not in the literal words, but in the greater meaning of what it means. And for me, what's most moving about being Jewish is being engaged as a collective, as a people in these same texts, and all of us having different opinions and that exchange of thought. It's the connection and the exchange of ideas that's a spiritual pursuit for me. So that's what I would tell people.
I love that, and I wonder if we could add the text or even substitute the text for what we read on Shavuot, the famous midrash that you and I know very well about the idea of the smashed tablets and this idea of brokenness, and that in the Aron, not only were the replaced tablets kept, but also we keep our original broken ones because that's part of our identity too. And there could be such interesting conversations around the brokenness we carry with us and what aspects of that brokenness actually form who we are. And it's a very vulnerable conversation to have. And I think about have an interfaith conversation around that, around like, what are the shattered pieces that were within us that help to guide us, and that we don't want to lose those for what they make us.
I mean, the cycle. I think that the ultimate metaphor for the Jewish experience is that from brokenness, from destruction, we rebuild, we rebuild again and again, and we get to the highest point, then we come down again. And it's like the up and the down. It's the ebbing and the flowing, the destruction, the rebuilding and regrowth. And Shavuot is both of those things. It's after slavery, we've built ourselves up. And then we have 7 weeks from Shavuot until Tisha B'Av, until destruction again. Then from destruction, the destruction of the temple, we have another 7-week period until Rosh Hashanah, which is about rebirth. And so it's these check-in moments throughout the year about where am I amongst the Jewish people? Where am I as a human being? And I think that we're so lucky to have these reminders of, okay, we're in a moment, we're gonna get past this moment, then we're gonna get to the next moment. Maybe it's gonna be better, maybe it's not. And there's always opportunity for growth and figuring out who we are. And I think that that is kind of what all of these markers are on the Jewish calendar, to remind us of time and the sanctity of time and how time passes, but also to remind us of our own growth.
So I'm going to end with a suggestion to our congregants, and if you have any suggestions too, I think our triage team has done admirable work today. So thank you.
I hope so.
I know that Shavuot takes place on Memorial Day weekend, and so a lot of people are going to be out and about. The Book of Ruth is a short, completely digestible, relatable, fantastic book with many lessons. It's very accessible. So when you're out in your Memorial Day festivities this weekend, go get some cheese pizza, sit and get some great ice cream. If you want to go to King Cone, that's a big place in Somers. It's the best, like it's soft serve and everything around. And bring with you the Book of Ruth, and maybe even bring a friend or two.
Named Ruth.
Yeah, it's even better. Okay. And have a discussion over ice cream of the Book of Ruth, and you are observing Shavuot when you do that.
I think that that's a really nice idea. And I also think I'll offer maybe a more traditional way. If you'd like to be if you'd like a traditional,
please.
You'd like a traditional Jewish meal on a Memorial Day weekend, you actually can grill on Chag. So,
what cheese are you gonna grill?
Or
your halloumi cheese, yes.
Or you're Sephardic and you do a meat meal.
Okay.
You could do halloumi cheese where if you're gathering as a family, take a moment to find a text, not necessarily a Jewish text, but a text, sit and discuss it, have an engaged discussion with other people, connect, and that's also the study of Torah, even if it's not actual Torah.
And on Friday morning before Memorial Day weekend, come and
Thursday morning.
Thank you, with you and with Cantor and bringing the festival together.
All right, looking forward to it.
Thanks, everyone. Triage team out.
Thanks for joining us on In Such a Time. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy, or to connect with Temple Bethel of Northern Westchester, visit bethelnw.org, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Temple Bethel NW. Thanks for listening.